Ignore the science, be mystical instead, and happier. Hi, I'm Captain Sociology, and here on this channel we take the time each week to investigate from a sociological perspective something that is going on in the world. Well, if you live far enough south or far enough north, you have the opportunity every year to observe the aurora. In the north, it's the borealis, and in the south, it's the australis. Being in Australia, of course, therefore, I'll be calling it the aurora australis. And if you live far enough north or south, this weekend, you had the opportunity to view the aurora. Oh my goodness. It was amazing, wasn't it? Everyone's talking about it. It's everywhere on social media. I loved it. We took the kids outside, we stared up into the night sky, we talked about how beautiful it was. The kids took turns with the phones, being able to get really nice, clear shots. It was amazing. So many people saying they've just ticked this one bucket list item off, and all from the comfort of their own home. We walked 100 metres to be able to see it really clearly. Then I got inside, checking my phone, as you do, and some nasty, mean, suck the joy out of life person had posted to a group chat, "Oh, it's because of the solar storm." Now, you know I'm not going to debate the scientific nature of that statement. Of course it is because of the solar storm. We're actually at a solar maximum at the moment, which is more than just a singular solar storm. It's a state in the cycle of the sun where it's very, very active. So we're not just looking at the australis because of the solar storm. We're looking at it because of where we are in the sun's cycle. But it did kind of suck the joy out of it. Oh, it's because of the solar storm. So I wondered, what impact has the australis or the borealis had on society throughout time? Because when you're standing out there in the dark, it was a cool night, staring into the sky, which is infinite, and you see these lights everywhere. What are you thinking? I didn't stand there thinking, solar storm. A little bit did, but not really. Were you? Now, if you're an expert in solar storms, that is fascinating for you. But I'm not, I'm a sociologist. So I've spent some time digging into some facts and some myths about the australis borealis, which should really fascinate you and show you how myth makes life better than science. So I looked into myths around auroras, and we have the childbirth myths. They're the first ones that really caught my attention. So in Iceland, it's thought that the presence of the aurora relieves pain in childbirth. Well, I couldn't find anything about whether we see increased rates of childbirth during auroras, but I did find, or at times when auroras are more prevalent, but I did find that auroras are connected to a high rate of premature birth because they interfere with the body's circadian rhythm. I did not know that, but I did spend a lot of last week saying how tired I was and it was the most Friday, Thursday I'd been through, all those sorts of things. So, interesting. But in Iceland, if you look at the aurora, apparently your child will be born cross-eyed. So no looking at the aurora, just know that it's there to relieve the pain of childbirth. In Siberia, the Chavosh, I hope I said that right, correct me in the comments, they see the aurora as a sign of the heaven god, as opposed to the earth god, I suppose, helping women in childbirth. So maybe there is something about this change in circadian rhythm, increased solar activity, that does maybe usher in an unusually high rate of childbirth. So I thought that was quite interesting. Then we have the goodwill myths. So a tribe on Manitoulin Island, and I had to look to make sure I got that right, Lake Huron, they say it's a sign of goodwill from their creator. And If you look at Finland, they have this lovely myth about the fire fox who's called Tuliketu. And the aurora, they think, is Tuliketu sprinting across the sky. And here's the beautiful part, I think. If you can catch Tuliketu, then you will experience wealth for the rest of your life. So it's quite a nice, hopeful myth. And we see in modern society, and Durkheim foreshadowed this, over 100 years ago, that as we actually have greater promises of hope through scientific advancements, that we're seeing reduced hope and enjoyment of life. Why? Because actually, the better things are, the better we assume they're going to be. And the better they are, the harder it is for things to improve further. So it's nice to have this idea, as the Finnish do, that you can hunt Tuliketu, and that is what brings you hope. Because you can hunt forever. I don't think anyone's going to stop hunting. But anyway, Tuliketu is the fire fox that sprints across the sky. Then we have the Viking myths, and there's a few variations on this. So it's thought perhaps it's the light of Valkyrie's armour. So Valkyries are the beings that usher soldiers from this world to the next. It could be the breath, according to the Vikings, of the departed soldiers who've fallen in battle. Isn't that beautiful hope? It gives something to unite around. When we look in the sky at night, we see these dancing lights. It's that breath. I quite like that one. Or it could even be the Bifrost Bridge itself leading to Valhalla. And so those people who've fallen in battle, it's not in vain when you die. There is this clear pathway to the afterlife. So I quite like that one too. What I thought was quite interesting is while there are a few more ominous myths about auroras, that so many of these are beautiful and hopeful and give encouragement in challenging situations. Love it. Because it gives everybody something. Everyone can see the sky. When you're, huddled around a fire and you're about to turn into bed, and the old people are the ones who sit up late. That's just kind of a biological reality. And you see these lights, and they tell you about these lights that they saw when they were up at the waking hours. In the dark, gives you something to unite around. Look at that. We remember the good people. We remember the moments in time where things were challenging. So I love that. In Australia, of course, it's less common to view an aurora because, generally speaking, too far north. Where I live, it's a bit more common. But as a continent, it's a little bit too far north for good viewings of the aurora in general. But there are some myths around the auroras, but these are some of the darker ones that I found. So it was thought perhaps by Indigenous Australians that auroras were fires in the sky. And you've got to remember that Indigenous Australians are members of somewhere around, don't quote me, 200 different nations, and so you're going to get some variations even in those cultures that have connections to the aurora. So we get this one, auroras are fires in the sky. Now, if you've seen Australian bushfires burning off in the distance, that is exactly what the aurora looks like. And if you've seen an aurora, that red glow in the night is exactly what you see in Australia when a bushfire is burning off in the distance. And let me tell you, that is no laughing matter. That is terrifying. And so I can understand that if there was no other signs and all of a sudden in the night sky you see that glow, that would be really ominous. So I can see that. It was called Ashes by the Indigenous nation in Western Victoria. And they thought of it as a symbol of impending disaster. And of course, if it is a bushfire, they are correct. So I can see where they got to on that. But that was probably the darkest I came across. And of course, myths explain something that is challenging, difficult to understand, and myths offer not necessarily a technical explanation, which is what science offers us. They offer us a way to understand what's going on. So I like that. That's the Indigenous Australians sort of saw it quite literally. But I also love that the idea that we can explain the challenges of childbirth and the way that women get through those challenges, and the challenges of facing death in battle, and the way that men face those challenges, and the way that communities reconcile the challenges of these kinds of big life events. I really love that we've mythologized this occasional appearance in the sky as a way to understand what's going on. I also thought, as I said before, I thought it was really interesting to discover that being born during solar storms or solar maximums actually related to a few physiological issues that affect society. And I, as a sociologist, always wonder, like, if we understood some of these things a little bit better, would we actually live more happy, successful lives? So one of them was that people in low status families, children born to low status mothers, born during solar storms, had lower birth lifespan expectancy at birth, which I thought was fascinating. I've got no idea why. I have to look into that more. One of the things that occurred for babies born during solar storms was they had lower fertility in adulthood. And again, this is that connection between the hard empirical sciences and our social science. What is it that's going on? And therefore, should we be trying harder to prevent births or avoid births during solar storms? You know, if you have the choice of being induced during a solar storm that isn't medically absolutely necessary, should we actually be using that to avoid those kinds of births? Like I said before, we also saw that premature births. And so maybe if we know that this is the case, we can be better prepared for increased premature births. Because, of course, if your hospital is really busy when you're born, then it's entirely possible that a doctor looks at you, you're kind of tracking okay, maybe get sent home a little bit earlier than is helpful. And again, maybe it's anyway, so I don't know. I don't know how much these things play into medical planning, but I sure hope that somebody is connecting these dots. Interestingly, the disruption in the circadian rhythm affects people as they go through life. So your circadian rhythm is obviously how you wake and sleep and metabolize food. We see during periods of solar maximum increased deaths from cardiac events. So I thought that was quite interesting. And so this, when you go back to those myths, might explain some of the deaths in battle. It might not have been specifically battle-related, but looked battle-related. You know, maybe, if you're having a cardiac event or your heart's just not coping quite as well and then you go to battle and then you die. That's death in battle, isn't it? But actually, maybe some of these things are connected. I don't know. I think I prefer the Valkyries arriving to take you from noble battle death rather than I died because there was a solar maximum. It just seems less mysterious and wonderful. And finally, another really interesting one is that elderly men have impaired lung function, respiratory function during periods of solar maximum. So again, if you're talking about people dying, then maybe you're talking about old dudes who go out to their one last battle with bad hearts or reduced lung capacity already. Can you see the difference though? Cultures, I just so want to dig into this a lot more because I think we've lost the mystery and the majesty and the mysteriousness that myth and our lack of scientific understanding provided to us. And I think we miss something about life. And I think it's harder to connect. When my chat lights up with "it's the solar storm," it's not a conversation point. If someone points at the sky and says it's the breath of fallen soldiers, I miss my dad, my brother, my husband, but look, this is glorious, a way for them to depart life. And I feel more connected to the people around me. But science just doesn't do that for our culture and community. It makes us live longer, happier, healthier, all those in theories, but it can't increase community. In fact, I think it reduces it. So if there is still solar activity that is making beautiful lights in the sky and there's no cloud around you tonight, get out there again. Look in the sky from the back of your phone if you need to. Just imagine that firefox running through the sky, and just hunt that thing down. Get into hunting that thing down so that you too can experience beauty and mystery and wonder for the rest of your days. Ignore the science, embrace mystery and myth, and I'll see you next time.